We all do research in some unique way, whether that's researching the best price for a plane ticket, searching on Google to find out who directed a movie, deciding between two different colleges, or even conducting a thesis, research project, or dissertation. We're inherently curious to find information so that it benefits us and others. And as you know, or as you might come to understand, research is expansive, and as such, we need a way to appropriately categorize it, and we can do that through what we call a continuum. So before we investigate the continuum of research, we do need to establish a definition for this term. Now, if you're writing, take a second to pause the video, think and jot down what you believe research is, and we'll compare it with our consensus definition. So here's our consensus definition. Research is a systematic process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. So what was your definition? Was it similar to that? If not, it's okay. We all probably have a different way of viewing and describing what research is. But what I'd like you to focus on here is the fact that good research, or true research for that matter, happens systematically. So we must ask the question, what do we mean by systematically? This term is in reference to a process I'm sure you've heard about at some point in time, and we call this process the scientific method. Again, it's our systematic way of conducting research so that we can achieve reliable results. So in this process, we have 5 major steps. We have the statement of the problem, and what we mean here is that we investigate research when we're faced with some kind of problem. And what we'll discover is that when we encounter these problems, either professionally, where we need more information, or when we uncover these problems in literature, where more information needs to be explored. The second step is to identify the purpose of the study. And so with this particular step, this represents the need for us to identify the purpose or the reason behind us conducting research. This helps us to stay on track and identify the most appropriate means to conduct our study. Now, in an academic setting, we oftentimes see this formed as a question, and that question guides the methods and the procedures that we use to conduct our research study. And as a result, this would lead us into choosing between studies like experimental, survey, or qualitative research. Now, once we've found the most appropriate means, then we gather the information that we need. And this is going to be followed by organizing and analyzing the information. And finally, we would take the information that we gather and we'd simply interpret it, which we oftentimes refer to as data analysis. So ideally, if we adhere to this process, we position ourselves to gain information in a valid and reliable manner. So now we must ask the question, what then is the research continuum? The research continuum represents the manner by which we categorize research, and on the two ends of the spectrum, we have what we call both basic research and applied research. Now, basic research essentially is what it sounds like. It's conducting research just for the sake of gaining more information. And don't we do this often? For example, when we watch something on TV and it triggers us to look up information, we're gaining information for the sake of it. And although it may be meaningful, there's not an immediate application of it. And again, on the other end of the spectrum, or the continuum, we have applied research. And it's here where we're conducting research for the sake of addressing a problem that we've encountered either professionally or within the literature. And so as you begin or continue to study research, you'll see that there is a plethora of different types or names of research, and they can all be placed somewhere on this continuum between both basic and applied research. So now that we have a better understanding of what research is, we should address the characteristics of research. In other words, how can we begin to know if the research is of good quality? Well, to help us answer these questions, we need to see that the research fits with these 5 characteristics. First, research needs to be systematic. The research should be or should have been conducted in an orderly fashion. In other words, it should be performed using the scientific method that we looked at earlier. And this oftentimes involves the use of both inductive or deductive reasoning. Second, the research needs to be logical. In other words, one way of identifying quality research is to ensure that there is a well-stated, researchable question that has been formulated, and by that, we are able to gather an answer at the conclusion of our study. Thirdly, research should be empirical. What we mean by this is that not only should the research be confirmed by logic, but it should also be accompanied by observations, experiences, or experiments to support the findings. And then fourthly, we have a term called reductive. And reductive means that the information, although it may be large in data or although it may be complex, it should be presented in a simplified manner so that individuals can practically utilize the information that's been presented. Lastly, we have the term replicable. Perhaps one way of expounding on this is by sharing what one of my dissertation committee members used to say. He would say, your methods or procedures should read like a recipe. And there's really a lot of truth to that. If the manner in which the researchers have described their process is difficult to follow, it really casts doubt on whether or not they exercised great care in gathering their information. So now that we've set the stage for what research is, its characteristics, and the continuum that it's on, you might be wondering, why do I really need research? What's the point? Well, if we take a moment to really think about it, the reason that we need research becomes fairly obvious. The way that we know things can oftentimes change. So think about it. How do you know what you know as it relates to your profession? Or how do you know what you know as it relates to a hobby or a task that you like to engage in? Well, you know it because you hope it's correct. Now, hope actually stands for something. Hope stands for hear, observe, perceive, and experience. And so what we're saying is that we know a lot of what we know because we've heard someone talk about it, we've observed it, or seen it firsthand with our own eyes, or maybe we've thought or perceived something to be the case without much fact. Or maybe our experience with something determines what we believe we know about it. So you might be asking, what's wrong with these things? And if we're honest, nothing really. But these things are again very temporal, meaning they can change. What we hear or observe about a technique may be good today, but inappropriate tomorrow, and what we perceive or experience today may be different from what we perceive or experience tomorrow. So it stands that we need a systematic way of gathering information so that the information we have is as valid and reliable as possible. And lastly, let's address one more component of research, and that's the academic research experience. Whether you're working on your master's thesis, project, or doctoral dissertation, this process is going to be applicable, or at least very similar. In academic circles, the way we begin to know about our topic, or the way we even know what topic we want to investigate, is by digging into the literature. And by this, we mean becoming knowledgeable about what research exists on the topic and determining where more research is needed. We oftentimes refer to identifying areas where more research is needed as a gap. And these gaps may be noted either professionally, which means that we've encountered some type of situation in our profession in which we need more information, or we've come across some articles on a topic and we fail to see a particular aspect of the study answered, we would then say that this gap occurs in the literature. And so now that we've identified the gap, we write a review of the literature to demonstrate that we're knowledgeable about our topic and the latest advances. We write the literature review as a means of showcasing how the study we plan to conduct fits into the existing body of literature on the topic. Once we've done this, we'll design our study, and it's usually based on conducting an experiment, an interview, a focus group, or some type of survey to help us fill that gap in the literature. Once we've done that, we typically propose the study that we've planned to a committee. And for the committee, there's usually someone that we call the chairperson, and the chairperson is the faculty member who's responsible for guiding you throughout the entirety of your thesis or your dissertation or your project. And then you may have other committee members at large who are responsible for reviewing and helping you to identify things in your study that need to be improved upon. Now, once the committee has reviewed your study and they've given their approval, they usually will ask you to apply for IRB approval. And the IRB stands for the Institutional Review Board. And essentially, this is a committee of individuals from your college or institution that ensure that your study will not place participants in harm, either psychological or physical harm. And then once the IRB has approved your study, then you'll be allowed to conduct your study based on the terms that have been agreed upon. You'll be able to gather and analyze your data, and then you will defend your study, which means to present your findings to your research committee. And then after that, you'll have an opportunity to either publish the work that you've done or to present your work at a conference.